Well, that came around quickly, didn't it? 2025, January already. And the good news is, or maybe the bad news is for all of you, probably not for us, is that even the Christmas New Year period, and especially somnolent period, yes, somnolent, look it up, over the New Year for politics was actually extremely busy. And it was mainly busy, although not exclusively busy, for a couple of reasons, some of which, or most of which, we're going to discuss in the show today, not least a bit of a ding-dong between Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative leader, and Nigel Farage, the Reform Party leader, about their membership numbers, who is bigger, school playground, eat your heart out, but of course as well, because of Elon Musk, a man who quite unbelievably, quite incredibly, in a way I have to say, I've never seen anything quite like it before, has become not just a plutocrat, not just the world's wealthiest man, not just whatever you think about him and his other demerits, clearly an extraordinarily successful and inventive and ingenious industrialist, one of the great ones, undoubtedly of our age, but incredibly has not only become a leading figure, a luminary in the court of Trump, but also one of the big players of British politics. Because what he is doing with his monopoly over the political information system, that is Twitter, X, formerly Twitter, which has proven to be for Musk one of the worst business decisions anyone has ever made. Twitter has lost 80% of its value since he took it over, partly because of the declining overall numbers, at least from some people, and certainly from the collapsing advertising revenue. But it's proven to be one of the most shrewd political investments anyone has ever done. Because at a stroke, he has made it into an ecosystem of right-wing and often hard-right and sometimes far-right tropes and information. It has become the house magazine of the global right-wing movements across the world. But it has also been his vehicle, his means of accessing the politics and power of the American state. He is basically now a quasi-official of the American state. But also, perhaps unbelievably, he has used it to become a big influence in British politics. When Elon Musk says jump, half of British politics now says how high. And he manages to, as we have seen over the Christmas and New Year period, most recently over this discussion about so-called Muslim grooming gangs, a big story over the last decade, something that Musk claims has been covered up. Many, many people would say that was completely wrong, or at least is not to the extent that he suggests. He has been able to control the narrative again and again in British politics, and he is throwing hand grenades at the leading players of British politics, as I say, up to and including Keir Starmer himself, suggesting Keir Starmer has been involved in a mass cover-up of the grooming gang scandal, suggesting that his safeguarding minister, Jess Phillips, should be imprisoned for her role in saying there shouldn't be a national inquiry. We can discuss whether or not that is the right answer or that is the right thing to do. That's a separate question. But surely we can all agree that what Musk is doing is serving to toxify British politics. He said that Tommy Robinson, fake name of course, Tommy Robinson, Stephen Yaxley Lennon, who's currently serving time at His Majesty's pleasure for contempt of court again, is some sort of political prisoner. And guess what? Hundreds and hundreds of millions of people are seeing these tweets and they believe them. They believe them because they don't know any better. If such claims were made on a station like this, it would end up in court. And it would end up potentially with a license being taken away. Rightly so. But because it's done on the unregulated Wild West that is Twitter, a website which is owned exclusively by Musk, he can do what he likes, almost, it seems, because the government does not seem to want to stand up to him. So afraid are they about his influence with the court of Trump? What to do with a problem like Elon Musk? That is our primary focus, at least for the first hour of the show. Lots of other things to get through as well, though. 0345 6060 973 for your thoughts on that. 0345 6060 973. First, let's talk to Aggie Chambre, LBC political correspondent, our first tête-à-tête of the year. That's nice, isn't it, Aggie? Nice to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
No, as always. Musk, it is amazing. He's now up there with the Prime Minister in terms of influence over British politics, perhaps even exceeding him, it seems, sometimes.
I mean, amazing is one word for it. It just felt like over Christmas, every day you'd wake up and there would be another post from Elon Musk. Not only a billionaire, not only the richest man in the world, but as you said there, someone very close to Donald Trump and indeed someone who's going to be involved in the next administration. And I mean, some of those posts were just just extraordinary. I mean, talking about Tommy Robinson, saying why is Tommy Robinson in solitary confinement prison for telling the truth, and also getting into these grooming gangs, these rape gangs, and saying the legacy media and corrupt politicians hid this for 20 years. No UK government inquiry for the rape gang of innocent little girls. Shame, shame, shame. And then going on to say in a different post, Starmer was complicit in the rape of Britain when he was head of the CPS. Starmer must go, and he must face charges for his complicity in the worst mass crime in the history of Britain. And how does the government respond to that? You would think that there might be some, firm responses, some them really pushing back against that really strong language, and some of it kind of not being true, as you alluded to. And I think there has been a bit of a shift, because if you think back to August of this year, August of last year, easily done, Downing Street did slap down Elon Musk when there was the riots. He then said that civil war was inevitable, and Downing Street came out and on behalf of Keir Starmer said there was no justification for him saying that. And it's felt like there's been kind of less of a response this time, I suppose because since that time Donald Trump has won an election, and indeed he's really taken Elon Musk into the fold. But
they don't want to fight with him. That's clear, isn't it? They just do not want to get into a war of words with him.
I think that's right, but I think that is very difficult, and I think that's increasingly very difficult. And Wes Streeting this morning is on the round. I know you're going to speak to him shortly, but he has accused Elon Musk of a disgraceful smear against Jess Phillips because of the language he used, which you mentioned there. But I think it's really difficult, and I think I was speaking to someone inside government about it, and they said, the problem with this is if the conversation shifts to being about this, which is what's happened, it could kind of push the government off course. They said not everyone is on X, not everyone is on that social media platform, but it's still really, really difficult. And I think part of that is how difficult it is to respond to it. And if you flipped it around, you had somebody here who was involved in the government, a minister, I suppose, saying that kind of thing about Donald Trump, I mean, what would happen? You'd imagine that, I don't know, the US ambassador would get on the phone. Maybe that's something Peter Mandelson will be doing in his new role.
Or if another political figure, let's just say for the sake of argument, although, he hasn't said it, so I want to make that clear, but let's say for the sake of argument, Nigel Farage said these things about Jess Phillips or about the Prime Minister. There would be a wave of repudiation from government ministers. They wouldn't hesitate to condemn it in the strongest possible terms. Let's be honest. They're afraid of Musk. He's the world's most powerful man right now.
I think that is such an interesting thought experiment. And I guess that will play out in real time in about 20 minutes when you speak to Wes Streeting, because you're right. If Nigel Farage had made these comments, they would be slapped down immediately. I think there is just absolutely no doubt about that. Those comments about Jess Phillips that he made, if Nigel Farage had said that, you'd have minister after minister after minister coming out and saying there would be absolute uproar. I mean, rightly. And it just doesn't feel like there has been that on the same scale with Elon Musk. So it'll be really interesting to see how, I suppose, the health secretary does respond to that. And indeed, when we start hearing from Number 10 on a daily basis next week, how they're going to respond to that. And I mean, Keir Starmer, I know we're going to get into this, is making a big speech tomorrow. How will he respond to that in answer to the questions? Because this is something we know, and he has tried to stay on really great terms with Donald Trump since he got into office. They had that infamous dinner, they've had a phone call. But actually, is this going to cause waves if they do respond too strongly? And this is something they've got to work out. But I think they are going to have to work out what to do.
Talking about the Prime Minister, you mentioned his speech there tomorrow. Another speech from the PM, kicking off the new year with a speech where he intends to do what?
He intends to talk about domestic policies. I mean, I have heard it described somewhere as a reset. I'm sure Number 10 would. Another reset. I'm sure Number 10 would. If you reset
your telly that often, it'll break. You can't do it.
That's actually factually correct. But basically, I think he's going to be putting more meat on the bones of how they are going to get to their waiting list targets. So basically, they have said the moment some people are waiting 18 months, they want 92% of waiting lists to get down to 18 weeks by the end of this parliament. And to do that, going to do various different things, which we're going to hear about tomorrow, like scrapping pointless NHS hospital appointments. So basically, follow-ups that they say are pointless. They're going to use more of the app. Wes Streeting's been boasting in the papers about the fact that the NHS app has more subscribers than Netflix, which actually is quite impressive. So they're going to use that more for people to book their appointments, to cancel, to manage.
Is it as good as Netflix?
I would say no.
Oh, well, you heard it here first, everybody.
But that's another question you could put to Wes Streeting.
Can you watch films on it?
Absolutely not.
No.
But it sounds like...
pointless.
Well, they say no. And it sounds like that's going to kind of form the backbone of the speech tomorrow. But I think it's all part of kind of trying to, not reset, but trying to get back on the front foot after what has been a turbulent 6 months. And it's 6 months today, actually, since Keir Starmer won office.
Oh, of course. They should put films on it. That would work. More people would definitely use it. 6 months, as you say. I mean, it's interesting. Is obviously there'll be a lot of talk because obviously this is the first full calendar year of the new government, and a feeling that the last 6 months was choppy. Do you think? I mean, is some of this overdone in the sense that of course it's been choppy and there've obviously been problems, and I think there is a sort of widespread worry among Labour MPs about how the government is going to navigate the really sort of turbulent waters ahead of the year. And I think it is going to be turbulent, but they're still polling at about 28%, 29% in the polls. It's not been, which isn't that much worse than they got at the general election. I mean, is some of this overdone?
I don't know. I think it depends entirely at the moment on how Reform and the Tories do. As you say, there is widespread concern among Labour MPs. There are question marks among Labour MPs about whether Keir Starmer will be Prime Minister when they go into the next general election, leader of the Labour Party when they go into the next general election.
Which is amazing, really, when you consider
Which is
that they
astonishing.
only won a majority of that size 6 months ago.
Exactly. But, as you say, if you look at the kind of raw polling numbers, the Tories are on, I think there was a poll today, 23%, Reform on 22%. Labour are still ahead. I mean, that is...
Despite it all.
Despite it all. And also, I don't think the Tories, they had a turbulent Christmas. They didn't have a great time with their membership numbers.
That. So people, we were watching stuff like this so people don't have to because they were too busy, having normal lives and pulling crackers and so on. But there was a sort of remarkable, weird little episode. It was like on Christmas Eve, wasn't it? I sort of think Christmas
Apparently
Eve
some people
time.
missed Christmas.
Apparently some people missed Christmas. The projector fellas from Birmingham missed Christmas because there was a row between Kemi Badenoch and Nigel Farage on Twitter, basically talking about their membership numbers and whose was bigger. And
Indeed.
Kemi Badenoch suggesting that Nigel Farage was lying about his membership number because he was claiming that Reform now have more members than the Tories.
That's right. And so Reform actually then got in some independent journalists to check out their figures to say they weren't faking them. But I was speaking to a Reform MP about this, and they said they were basically absolutely delighted. They called Kemi Badenoch their new head of campaigns because they said after she tweeted, their video had 250,000 views. And after Kemi tweeted, it then had 2.5 million views. So they were absolutely delighted. They asked that Kemi Badenoch could get involved more in their rows. But it does look like Reform have overtaken the Tories in membership figures. And they've just had a successful couple of days at conferences. Reform, I think, are feeling pretty good at the moment. And, there is this question mark over whether they'll get this money from Elon Musk. This Reform MP said to me, no one would be shocked if it happened. I think that's true. So I think they're going into the new year feeling pretty good. I think Kemi Badenoch is going into the new year probably not feeling great.
No, but that's not true. Because finally, Aggie, that's not true. Because we saw that quote in the Sunday Times this morning. It made very clear they're not rattled, right?
I think that was
What was the exact quote?
So we've sent one tweet, referring to the tweet I just talked about. They've been banging on about it for days. We're not rattled. We're not rattled at all.